Welcome to Coruzant Technologies, home of the Digital Executive Podcast.
Welcome to the Digital Executive. Today's guest is Matthew DeChant. Matthew DeChant is the CEO of Security Council, an information security management consultancy. Matt has over 25 years of experience building information technology and security programs. As an in-house CISO and through Security Council, Matt has managed the creation of cybersecurity programs for numerous clients and their executive teams, corporate boards, and high net worth individuals. He leads response events and conducts tabletop exercises with his clients to help them prepare for their potential worst case scenario cybersecurity events. He is part of numerous cybersecurity best practice committees and boards and is passionate about supporting quality cybersecurity education. Well, good afternoon, Matt. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian.
Appreciate you jumping on. I know it's late in the evening. We got some travel plans. Obviously, it's this time of the year, Thanksgiving. So, Matt, I do appreciate you making the time, hailing out of Chicago. But let's just jump into your first question, if you don't mind. With the rise of AI and other technology-centric tools, how can cybersecurity protocols within organizations stay human-centered, focusing on user interaction and benefits rather than just technical prowess?
Yeah, I think, Brian, you sort of hit it on the head there with the human-centered comment here. We've got to take a people-centered approach here to using what is turning to be some very, very powerful technology and sort of in its early days, right? So we expect that we're going to see some major changes here in the coming years. One of the first things that organizations should do is just assume that it's already widely in use. It may not be on the company systems or whatnot, but the tools are powerful. People are very incentivized to use them. And there should just be a wide assumption that the best approach here is sort of a yes, comma, and rather than a no, comma, but approach. Figure out what kind of guardrails can be put in place with good policy, good legal terms, good due diligence on these AI systems are desired to be used, and assume that they're going to be used in some way and that you need to sort of meet people in the middle about that. We faced something like this around cloud computing almost a decade ago here. In those days, it was almost unheard of that you were going to move your sensitive information to what was called the cloud. It was brand new for everybody. But eventually, those offerings matured. The security around them was well demonstrated, and it became widely adopted. To see the same thing here. Another thing to focus on, of course, is that these systems are largely recursive, right? Your question or query winds up potentially being part of somebody else's answer. It's all designed to be building on top of itself. And so, we need folks at organizations to think a bit critically. You certainly wouldn't go to a bar and a restaurant and discuss trade secrets around your organization. Shouldn't be the case unless you truly understand that these systems are going to keep that information private. Finally, I would say here for all workforces, we really need to double down on training. We can certainly see from a cybersecurity point of view, compromises very, very easy to achieve with the level of sophistication we have around audio spoofing and soon to be assumed very, very good video spoofing. And so, we need to revert back to some old methods here. Think about when you were a kid and you had a code word for getting picked up from school, right? Ways in which we can circumvent the technology that's trying to take advantage of us.
Thank you. And I appreciate you focusing on the human part of it. In every podcast we talk about at the core of everything, it's people. And this is no different. I think security awareness, the training, the communication goes hand in hand with all these new technologies that we're deploying and leveraging these days. So I appreciate your insights. And Matt, many tech leaders prioritize new features and rapid launches over long-term security in apps and software. How can companies integrate a secure first approach into their development cycles while maintaining competitive innovation?
Yeah, that's a great question. We don't want to get in the way or the speed of business in any way whatsoever. And so we've got to mesh or on-ramp with where the business is going in a meaningful way, but we've also got to keep people out of orange jumpsuits and prevent breaches from happening. And so I think this question really kind of focuses on the concept of technical debt versus, as you sort of phrased it here, innovations and feature improvements that maybe are customer-centric. There's a subset of technical debt, what we might call security debt here. And we've got to really meet with those teams, those groups, and understand there's probably also a customer need that is widely expected, which is the systems that they're using are also going to be secure. And so when assumptions don't match up to reality, that's when you're really looking back in the mirror as an organization, trying to decide here, look, if we've got a pie available of resources, some of them are dedicated to pure technical debt, and some are dedicated to new features or new products or going after new customers, that there's a general expectation that the ecosystem in which we're operating is going to require we showcase and actually execute on good security here. So organizations need to find room. I know it's difficult, can be hard. There's a lot of pressure. And we see this all the way up to the board level here, where features and new customers are the easy prioritization here. And it's because we see at all levels of organizations a lack of true understanding of what it takes to run a professional information security program at a company. And again, that comes back to education, teaching at all levels here the importance of good security. If we're a company that's designing software for a living, or it's just part of our offering, maybe it's not a primary goal here, then, we'd hope to have a fairly robust software development lifecycle document or policy. That's typically going to have 7 or 8 stages or phases of software development, everything from initial design to eventual sunset. We should have an expectation, or executives of a company or the board should have an expectation that security is getting done at every step. It's not to the end to figure out. And usually the sell is pretty easy here because it's just more expensive to do later. And so if we do it early and we get in at the early phases of development, sometime around the design phase, we'll be in much better shape. Another trap that companies find themselves falling into here is if they're really truly part of their culture is to build versus buy. We haven't seen a problem we can't solve by coding our way out of it. It's usually not a good idea to make up your own security bolt-ons to your products and services. There's thousands and thousands of vendors that are much better at this. It usually is a much better overall outcome to manage that through good vendor management, good supplier management, good partner management. It is to try to build something and maintain it for the very reason we're talking about here, which is over time be a bit of a lull in interest, keeping that thing maintained.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. Really do. And you highlighted a point that I like to, focus in on is you can kind of basically, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, pay now or pay later is you need to fold in that SOP in the beginning through the whole process. We've had this for years, as people that are offboarding or leaving an organization, that gets forgot about. And we've seen time and time again where people are left with full access to these systems and they may not have left on great terms with the company. I mean, that's just one example that we can highlight here, but I do appreciate that. Matt, with a critical shortage of skilled cybersecurity professionals, it seems like tech companies need to do more to attract, train, and retain talent. How can mentorship and better training tools be leveraged to mitigate vulnerabilities caused by this talent gap?
Yeah, the talent gap is pretty severe, where we are short several million. We have several million open roles here in the United States, at least, and many more globally. Mentorship plays a big part there. We need to have a robust farm league, as it were, work to get people interested in this profession and get them interested early. There are plenty of opportunities to upskill. A quick Google search will produce many of these here. Obviously, you can double down on a computer science degree at a 4-year university. You can do a master's degree in cybersecurity. There are plenty of certifications that you can go after. There are universities that are more in line with sort of trade development. I think DeVry University. There are certainly meetups for specific parts of cybersecurity programs if you're doing identity and access management. There is a meetup for you. And certainly there's a lot to be learned from conferences. So plenty of opportunities exist for upskilling. And it's really just kind of coming up with that secret sauce of both hard and soft skills that you want to develop. There are also a ton of ways in which folks can reskill. The Department of Labor supports a number of great companies. One in particular is called Apprenti, where there are some folks that have maybe had a career, it's mostly blue collar, maybe they're an electrician, for example, and they want to get into cybersecurity. And there are companies that will fully support both their training and also real apprenticeships, real firms where they can become cybersecurity professionals. So there is governmental support in this way. And bigger companies understand that they need to train up folks that are compatible with their company mission and culture as well here. So most of the big companies that I'm aware of here with fairly large cybersecurity teams, it's a given or expectation to bring in fresh analysts and train them internally. A lot of it is on the job training. We have some maybe perceptions not meeting reality about what folks do in cybersecurity. If you ask anybody that's currently in college now considering a job in this profession here, and you ask them what they want to do, inevitably they're going to tell you something like, I want to do pen testing. Right? This is what movies and TV have sort of glorified here. Folks, they're fending off hackers with keystrokes, right? But there's so much more to it here. We have to focus on security operations. It's a big component of running any program here. But there's also governance, compliance, and risk that are hugely important, and covered under there is the design of good security programs, the architecture of what good looks like. So there is plenty to do. I cannot think of a profession that sort of stretches your brain in 12 different ways simultaneously than this one. And so you have an open mind to learning all the various aspects of running a good program. You will not be bored in any way. And then finally, there are some organizations like the military that are very good at producing very well qualified folks for cybersecurity. These folks are mission oriented. They know how to achieve a goal. They know how to follow a process, and we find helping to place folks like winds up being a very good outcome.
Thank you. You've obviously listed quite a few areas where folks could jump into this industry, get some training, some mentorship. Obviously, there's a lot to do. And we've seen a lot of success stories of people. You'd mentioned blue collar. Absolutely. I think you and I both know probably several folks that have jumped into this profession coming and doing a total career 180. So I appreciate you sharing a lot of that. Matt, for the last question here of the evening, for tech startups seeking funding or preparing for acquisition, having a robust cybersecurity program is a critical part of due diligence. How can startups and the VCs who support them integrate cybersecurity into their growth strategy to enhance both operational resilience and investor confidence?
Yeah, it's a great question here. I think no matter what event this, let's call it a scrappy startup or sort of the small guys are sort of thinking through here, every dollar counts and make sure they're spending their money wisely. But, let's say they're trying to go after that first big client or clients, or they're going to be part of a merger to form a larger company, or they're looking to get acquired, looking to sell their company after they sort of matured their technology or whatever they're doing here. Or maybe they're going public. Maybe it's an IPO or it's a SPAC or something like that. Whatever it is, we typically would recommend that the time frame be at least 6 months, if not a year out from that event. A lot of cybersecurity can be done very, very quickly with a startup that can move in an agile way, and it's not sort of bogged down by decades of this is the way that we do it, or our size prevents us from moving fast. In many cases, with those types of companies, they're slow to change because they change slowly. Just they move at a certain speed. Startups tend to move faster here, but there are other parts of cybersecurity programs that you just cannot move any faster. You can't acquire a product and service quickly. You can't stand managed security services, in a day or two. It takes some time and some effort and relationship building and signing contracts and all that good stuff. And so if you try to start this now in the 11th hour, let's call it 4 weeks before one of these events is happening, then you may endanger that event from happening. And so there has to be some preparation, and you need to give yourself a bit of a runway there. If we're talking about sort of the other side of the equation, if we're talking of VC firms or private equity firms, there's lots of advantages there as well. Let's say they're on the other side of this acquisition or merger or whatnot. These firms are typically operating in one of three modes. They're either doing their due diligence on companies that they want to interact with or acquire. Once they do acquire, they need to keep them operating and maintain the value of the company. There could not be a thing that could result in clear devaluation, a major incident or breach here. The company will just be worth less. And third, they usually want to get out after a certain period of time here. And so that's back to that startup mentality where they are. They need to be ready 6 months or a year from now so that a buyer or acquirer is completely confident that there are no issues around this company's cybersecurity program. So you got to give yourself some time and breathing room to get those things done and be ready.
Thank you. That's really important, and again, we talked about that in the first question I had around your answer in folding into kind of the standard operating procedure in beginning to end sort of thing. And I know startups are pretty nimble and they've got a lot of deadlines and they're trying to make their move. But it's the one thing nowadays you just cannot forego is having a good cybersecurity program at all stages. So I appreciate that. And Matt, it was such a pleasure having you on this evening, and I look forward to speaking with you real soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Brian. Have a good night.
Bye for now.